listening to Reignite, a podcast about two friends trying to save the world. I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And we did it.
We're in the home stretch as far as Season 1, and we have completed officially everything that we tried to, at least, in the first Mass Effect game.
We finished Mass Effect 1, and now all there's left to do is talk about it.
Yeah, I really wanted to do a postmortem on the game and the season because I thought it was important, as we continue to do the podcast, I feel like we have an obligation to you as the listener to continue to improve and incorporate as much as we can that will enrich in the experience, but also talk about Mass Effect 1 as a game for the first time, except here and there, on a meta level. Talk about the gameplay, talk about the mechanics, what we loved, what we hated, talk about what we might change or how we would look at it differently, how it's changed us, things like that. I think that this is an important post-game meta conversation as well as, just talking about our characters as we have in the past.
I'd like to start with kind of going back to the inception of this podcast. What did we hope to accomplish?
We joked that this was your brain baby, but it was. The podcast concept was your idea. I had been podcasting for a little while, and you said, hey, what if we did this thing? What if we played Mass Effect and talked about it? And I feel like back then it was a lot less honed in on our experience and more just talking about the game in general. I think as we talked about it more, it evolved to the emotional connection to our characters and talking about the social ways it affected us and other things like that. And I think for the most part, we accomplished that in the series so far. I think that there are definitely points where I could have been more thorough. I think that my relying on my memory isn't as strong as I thought it was. I should probably take a little more notes. And more importantly, if I want to mention something specific, like a character or a mission, I should write it down. But other than that, I think it's clear that listeners are connecting, that a lot of people feel the way we feel. And I am quite happy with what we've got so far.
Yeah, my original goal was to treat Mass Effect kind of like a sacred text, the way Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, that podcast, goes about their readings. And I couldn't quite make that work for Mass Effect, but I think what we wound up doing was better for the kinds of discussion that we wanted to have. We wanted to draw comparisons between the game and life, and I think we did that. I think we uncovered a lot of situations in which our feelings had changed, and I think our feelings changed because the world we live in has also changed.
Yeah.
So who we were then and who we are now are different people, and they're having different experiences.
Yes. I think that, honestly, I don't know that I could have done a podcast where we just treat Mass Effect as if it's a reality and talk about the lore and the stories and the text, as it were. I don't think I could have gotten my brain to that point. I think personalizing it was easier for me since it was already a very personal experience. As we've talked about many times, there are benchmark moments in the trilogy and Andromeda, I assume once I play it, that we connect to emotionally. And I think it was important to talk about those things. And I still say that our Vermeer episode is one of my favorites because there was the most meat of that major decision making.
Mm-hmm. How do you think your view has changed from that first time you played to this time?
I think it's fairly obvious just through the episodes if you've been listening, but definitely my character interactions have changed. I view characters very differently first of all, it's been said, but I will reiterate, my go-to Shepard was not male Shep, it was femme Shep. Because I love Jennifer Hale, as I've talked before. I'm a huge fanboy for her voice acting work, but also because I identified with that character more. And I don't find myself identifying with women all the time, and I don't think it's a gender thing. I just think the way femme Shep moved through the world, I identified with more than the way male Shep did. Part of that is I tend to lean more feminine than masculine, especially when talking about modern toxic masculinity. I tend to lean more feminine in pop culture. So that's probably part of it. And so playing as male Shep this time around, but being insistent on making it about my experience as a man in this world, I was able to cater the experience more to that and make it feel more like my identity and the way I would think. I think the easiest and biggest change I've experienced is with Caden, as we've mentioned before. Mm-hmm. I view his character very differently. Ashley to a point, but I think I'm still kind of stuck in a similar rut with Ashley. I think I'd have to play again to and really heavily go against the grain to pursue with her to find out more and to learn more. Also, I view Liara very differently. I found her a lot less mature this time around than my first time. I think part of it was the intrigue, of course, as a young man, seeing two female characters interact on a sexual level. I think that I'd be lying if I said that didn't drive it a little bit, and it made me ignore some of that narrative stuff. Mm-hmm. But as a man, and knowing more about this world and how men treat women on the grander scale, because it's not my experience, but living through the experience of others, I was less inclined to pursue a young woman who seemed very inexperienced. I think I was more aware of that as a mature male, which changed that dynamic as well. I think character-related 10 poles are where I really saw the most difference. The meta side of it, the controls, the gameplay, all of that stuff is stuff that, while it was a little different playing on PC where I'd previously played it on Xbox for the most part, my opinion on that stuff hasn't changed. And we'll go more into that as we talk about likes and dislikes.
Yeah, for me, I also flipped a lot on characters. I started to realize that I was seeing more interesting things about Caden and started to dismantle what I think prevented me from seeing the good in Caden, which was the ingrained toxic masculinity and internalized misogyny that prevented me from seeing that Caden was, though soft, strong and kind.
Yes.
And those are not negative aspects, which I think a lot of society wants to target as negative aspects. You're not really a man if you're doing this, but that's not true. There is no one way to be a man.
Correct.
And I think coming around to that and realizing, oh, I have changed, my views have changed, and now my feelings about this character have also changed.
Yeah.
And I think I had that experience with Caden. I had a similar experience with Ashley, because I think wanting to give Caden a shot enabled me to give Ashley a shot. And I was able to look at her a little more critically and actually see her journey instead of just dismissing her out of hand. Mm-hmm. And also with romance, I used to romance Liara, but now it feels very predatory.
Yeah.
And just not appropriate for me.
I feel like this is the first time both of us have not approached a relationship in Mass Effect 1. Typically, both of us have pursued whoever, if I was male Shep, it was typically Ashley or Liara, because those are your choices, I always picked one, and this is the first time where I didn't. I shut Liara down pretty early. I started to pursue a relationship with Ashley to get to know her, but then under gunpoint chose still the character I was more connected to. And so it left me with nothing. I think in the same way, as you said in the episode when we covered it, you just felt predatory and you didn't feel comfortable pursuing a sexual relationship after a major tragedy.
Yeah. So that was a huge change for me. But mechanics-wise, I feel like we had this conversation that will appear in the next episode where it was mentioned that you have to become a pro in the mechanics in order to experience them without difficulty.
Right.
And I feel like I kind of hit that level.
Yeah.
I hit the point where I was like, I know exactly how this thing drives.
Yeah. I think part of that is also the fact that there are ways to play the Mass Effect games where you don't have to engage in the more difficult combat. You can choose the easier mode of play, and so combat is still a challenge, but definitely not the challenge it used to. It had to be, especially in the first game. Whereas there's a story mode in the second and third game, there's a casual mode in the first game. Casual is kind of a loaded word in the gaming community, whereas they said that in the second and third games, you're just more interested in the story. The combat will still be a challenge for you, but definitely not the kind of challenge that makes you that you have to play over and over again and die over and over again.
My next question is, was there a moment that truly surprised you in this playthrough?
What a great question. So it's funny. I think the moment that surprised me is not a moment I got to experience, but in sharing about the game, which is part of why we do this podcast, is sharing our stories of the game. But you telling me in the last episode, the DLC and side quest episode, how Edie had origins in the first game, which I didn't even know, and I've played the game so many times. That was a huge surprise to me. And now all I want to do is go back and play one again to get that moment. But that is cheating for our purposes. But I can, of course, still start another playthrough on my own that's not related to the podcast. But I don't need more work to do. But yeah, that was a truly surprising moment for me. I think I was surprised just how much I got attached to Caden, just as a character, because you can't even romance him in the first game. But just how much I cared about what he had to say, wanted him in the party, because that's a hard shift from previous playthroughs. You know, we have a guest on the next show. We're recording a little out of order. And, you know, our guest talks about how, you know, if you were male Shep, you tend to go for Ashley. If you're female Shep, you tend to go to Caden, just because the game kind of pushes you that way, because it is more straight oriented than the later games.
Right.
And so, of course, I tended to do that because I was either already pursuing Ashley in a relationship, or I was with Liara but still wanted to keep Ashley alive, just the engenderment of it, if that's a word. This time around, I was really surprised how much I really did. That character did grow on me, the character of Caden. How much I cared about him. How much I wanted to get to know the character more. Because I always wanted to get to know Tali and Rex and Garrus. You know, and Ashley to a degree. But Caden was always the one I cared the least about. And he ended up becoming the one I cared the most about. Which I didn't see happening. When we started playing, at least.
Yeah. My most surprising moment, I think, was on the Citadel when my shepherd had to talk to Talitha, who is a young woman who experienced the same trauma that she did.
I remember.
And I had never played through that scene before. And, like, as a person with trauma, it was very, not difficult for me to play through, but it was very emotional. And it brought a lot of things to the surface. And I am typically comfortable talking about, because if I don't talk about it, then like I'll just shrivel up and die. So it was interesting and surprising for me to think about Shepard in a way that is more relatable to me.
Right.
Like, Shepard is in many ways someone that I could never be, because I could never like join the Alliance Navy. I could never like be a soldier.
Right.
But being a scared girl whose entire world got turned upside down because some people didn't really care whether she lived or died, I can relate to that.
Sure.
So it was surprising for me to like find my trauma somewhere in the game.
And you'd never seen it before, having been very experienced with the game, which is always really interesting.
So, yeah. What do we hope that we'll achieve in our next season?
I mean, for one, I'm hoping that I'll pay more attention to detail and do more deep diving. I did myself a disservice on how I played the first game as we went through the season. I just, due to work schedule and other things and working on other shows, I waited till the very last minute to do almost every play session, and so I was mostly gearing towards the story, assuming that I could eventually go back and do the side quests. And I got locked out of a lot of it. And I'm bummed because there are a bunch I'm familiar with. Now, as we went through the list in the last episode, I'd say half of them don't carry over. They just are what they are. And so I care less about that. But I think in the second season, I'm going to work harder to be a little more granular with the playthrough. And also that'll come with the fact that the game, I think the contents of the game are better organized than the second game.
Yeah.
And so it'll be easier to do that as well.
The second game will also like give you a heads up when there's a mission to do.
Yeah.
Like when you've picked up a mission in it somewhere, the second game is better about telling you that it's there.
Yeah.
Whereas the first game, you may pick up the mission, but nothing on the map indicates to you that there is a mission waiting for you anywhere.
Yeah. I think also with the incorporation of a ton of DLC in the second one, whereas the game only had one or two, the game caters to you going off the beaten path. It's actually very important to parts of the game. And there is only one moment, like in the first game, where you're locked and more or less on a timeline and can still make choices outside of it, but it just will impact the final moments of the game if you make those choices. And so I think there's a lot more there. I think there's also a lot more room for hurt in the second game. Yeah. And I think we're going to have a lot more emotional discussions, especially getting towards the ending. which I think is important. I think the emotional impact is really important. The third game has a ton of that too. We talked a lot about on the Vermeer episode that this is a condensed amount of emotional impact. There is more as we get through the tail end of the game, and it definitely is more emotionally heavy towards the end of the game. But, it's more densely packed in the first game, whereas it's more spread out, I think, in the third game to lead up and earn those moments at the end.
Yeah, one of my goals is a little less about the game and more about the way we structure our podcast. Mm-hmm. We'd like to have more people on and more voices, because we are just two people who are both very Paragon-oriented. Yeah. And I think it would benefit us if we have a third voice every once in a while to say, okay, but this is what I did, and it's different from what you did. Yeah,
I think that we didn't realize when we started that we would both lean more Paragon, even though we should have. I think that I may lean more Renegade in the second game than I did in the first because, again, as we've discussed, the choices seem more nebulous and not clearly, I'm an asshole or I'm a good person. Like, there's more... more gray, more flying by the seat of your pants moments because there are quick time events. And so I think that will affect how we engage more, and we may diverge more in the second and third games. That said, I agree. I think that having more voices, also we're coming from a very specific place, both with our sexuality, with, we're both white, so we have only that perspective to experience. So I think bringing people of color and people of different sexual backgrounds and orientations will all, gender identities will all lend to expanding the conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it'll be tough to have a guest every episode, but I think we should, I would like to have more than 2 guests next season. I'd like to have at least 4 or 5 if I had my dream number or more.
Yeah, we'll talk to people in our lives and we'll see what they're into.
Yeah.
And we'll try and coordinate accordingly. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Sure.
Are there any questions that you'd like to ask?
I think the questions I want to ask are on the more meta level, on the broader scope of, and stuff that we will cover in the next episode a bit too, but like, what's your favorite moment and least favorite moment in Mass Effect 1? I think for me, just on a meta level, my least favorite thing about the first game is, and it's not just about the Mako. In fact, I've come to terms with that. I think, honestly, the thing I like the least as a diehard RPG player is the overabundance of customization. Now, I get it. I have friends, like my friend Matt, who loves that part. He was devastated in the second game when they took out all of the weapon customization because he is an old school RPG player and he loves over-granular customization. But me, especially after this season's playthrough, most of the add-ons don't matter, especially if you're someone who just wants to see the story. Like in a casual mode, you can blast through barely upgrading your stuff. And so, like, I get why it was there, and I understand the thought behind it, but I also understand why they took it out in the second game, because I didn't feel a need to over-customize, because I could get through the game without needing to, which makes it fairly superfluous. And also, like, your inventory is limited. Like, there are different ways they could have done the loot, gear up, and customization system if they had counterintuitive stuff. Like, if you had an unlimited inventory, then okay, then I wouldn't have cared as much because they would have just sat there and I would have kept playing the game. But the game kept asking me to stop, to either turn stuff into Omnigel or sell it or whatever, because my inventory was full, because I wasn't paying attention to what I had because I didn't really need to.
Right. That was frustrating for me. I hate the micromanaging. I just kind of want to pick my gun.
Yeah.
And, like, if I can even craft my gun to my, like, specifications, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But, like, I just want the gun that I want, and then everything else can go away because I just want to play with this specific play style, and please leave me alone. And, like, every 5 minutes, you're closing in on 150 items. You should get rid of stuff. But I got rid of 100 things like 5 minutes ago. How did this happen?
Yeah.
It was just so stressful and so exhausting. And that was the thing that I really did not like about, like, the way that Mass Effect 1 was structured.
Yeah.
I also hated the galaxy map doesn't give you any indication of where you've been.
It's why I struggled so much, I think, because I'm so used to... Because even though 1 is the game I probably played the most in prep for multiple other games in the series because they were all connected. 2 and 3 are still fresher in my mind, and so I just assumed I'd have some semblance of guidance that I didn't. And that was a bummer because I missed some really important missions to me, but because I was rushed or I didn't go looking, which is all on me, I missed out on that stuff. I would say that my favorite thing about Mass Effect 1, and it just gets better as the series goes on, is the world. The music, the sound design, and the story are top-notch. There are things that I might change just knowing what I know now many years later as a gamer. Before what it was, as I said very early on in this podcast, it's the reason I bought a 360 was so I could play this game because it wasn't anywhere else. And it was nothing like what I had experienced before as an RPG player. I was so hooked from the beginning. I think that definitely comes from how strong the world is built around, how engaging the music and the sound effects are, and how expertly the dialogue and VO is done. Of course there are moments and things we make gags about, like the whole turn to the left and walk away that every character does in the whole universe. But again, all that aside, it's easy to see the flaws now, but at the time I was completely enamored with it, and I still am. It's definitely the strongest on a meta level thing about the game, is that it's so easy to be sucked into that world.
For me, it's the people. The people are my favorite part.
Okay.
Because there's just so many people that you meet and you interact with, and they're all so different and interesting, and you can learn so much from all of them. Like, Tally is, like, bright and friendly and kind and inspiring, and Rex is also inspiring, but all in such a different way because he's been so hopeless for so long, and finally he's starting to figure out how things can change, and that's because of your friendship.
Yeah.
And like Garrus was a hothead, and then he started to see that things could be different, and that's because of your friendship.
Yeah.
And like friendship is one of the most important things in my life. I would die without my friends. And to see such strong relationships that can be platonic or can be romantic, and there's no judgment on how you take it or what you do, it's just so touching to me. So whenever I see these strong relationships, that is what seals my attachment to it.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I think that's the best thing you can say about Mass Effect 1 and the series in general, is there are no wrong answers. There are answers you have to live with the consequences of, but there's no right or wrong answer. There are just answers. You just make choices. I'd say maybe in the third game, there are choices you make that are hard to live with, but they're still your choice. You made that choice. You may have to live with it, but it wasn't the wrong decision. It was the decision you made, and it had effects. And I think that's, speaking to the relationships, that's a really great thing. And that even if you shoot down Liara, she still wants to help. She doesn't take, she takes it personally, but you grow beyond it. You become friends. Like they don't abandon you because of how you feel, act, or do.
Yeah. And things like that may change in 2, but that's also a thing that I love about it, is that the characters keep growing.
Yeah, they evolve.
Like, they don't stop growing because you're not with them for 5 minutes. They keep changing. They keep going through things.
Yeah.
And they suffer the way regular people suffer.
Yeah.
And that means a lot to me, to see them actually exist in the world.
Yeah, totally. I think that at the end of the day, the first Mass Effect is one of my favorite stories in gaming. The unfortunate thing about Mass Effect on a meta level is that it doesn't, 2 is just for the most part better in every way. I'd say that I like the main story in 1 more, but I love how the whole story plays out in 2.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I think that the main story in 2 might be a little weaker on its own, but because of all of the relationships and that you get specific missions for each companion and like all of that stuff makes it a stronger, complete narrative. I think it's a more lived-in, fuller world. Whereas the first game, it's still getting its bearings, and the main story plot is still one of the strongest sci-fi stories, but it's easier to see the holes in the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so it would be a surprise to nobody, as I've said it before, that 2 is my favorite game in the series. But what I'm curious about is to see if it still is as we move on to it. Then move on to 3, because it may change. And I haven't played Andromeda, which we will do on the show. And, like, I doubt that'll become my favorite just based on what I've heard, but one never knows. And so we'll see. I think that the thing that keeps the Mass Effect series as one of the most talked about video game series is its characters and its world. It's just so well established and fleshed out. And even though we've pointed out some holes in the first game, like how there are no fat people in space, there aren't a lot of women or any non-binaries in space, except for technically Liara's race is, because they don't consider to have a sex, but they're female presenting, but it's like...
They consider themselves monogendered.
Right, instead of non-binary, which is no gender. They consider themselves just one gender.
Right.
So, which is
It's
different.
not really the same thing.
Right. But that's the most we engage with gender on an even greater metaphysical level in the universe is through the Asari, at least initially. So I think that at the end of the day, I'm glad that we played the first game. I loved it, but I'm glad it's behind us, because the second game is where I think the second game took something that I had a fascination with and I fell in love with it. The second game is when I really fell in love with the series, because also with the first game, I had no prior knowledge. It didn't exist. And I didn't know BioWare that well, because I didn't play Knights of the Old Republic and Jade Empire. I still haven't played. But I didn't know about those games until after. Whereas with Mass Effect, I knew about Mass Effect going into Mass Effect 2, and it's the most excited I'd been for a game ever, and probably since, with a few exceptions.
And then I think the first 5 minutes kind of played with you a little bit.
As we've toyed with that redacted quite a bit, and we will talk about it in the first episode of Season 2. Yeah, that definitely didn't hurt it as far as having an impact.
Mm-hmm. It's just so memorable.
It is.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to review?
I don't think so. I think that I would love for the listeners to share either on our Discord, on our Twitter, send us an email, and we'll read it in the next episode or the episode after that. But let us know your favorite and least favorite things about Mass Effect 1, whether it's narrative, whether it's character, whether it's gameplay, whether it's story. Now that we're through the first game, I'd love to know, as there are at least 6 people I can think of off the top of my head who have strong feelings, what you really love and don't love about this game. Because Mass Effect 1 is not a perfect game by any means. Though some people may view it as a perfect experience. And if you do, that's fine too. Then why? Why is it perfect for you? Why do the flaws not matter? Or do you not see them as flaws? But yeah, I would love to know what our listeners think of the first game as a whole, and give us some stuff to talk about in upcoming episodes before we wrap up the season.
What I'd like to do before we move on to anything else is just review what our major choices for the game were.
Sure.
Because I think we made mostly the same things, but I just want us to have a record of this is what we did.
Yeah, totally.
So.
And what we're talking about is, for the most part, major story beats. The kind of stuff that if you use the Dark Horse digital comic version of 1, the choices they'd make you make.
Yeah. Noveria. Save or kill the Reignite Queen.
As I recall, I saved the Reignite Queen.
I also saved the Reignite Queen. Did Rex survive on Vermeer?
Yes.
Yes. Did you pick Caden or Ashley?
I picked Caden.
I picked Ashley. Save the council or let them die?
Save the council.
Also save. Anderson or Udina?
Udina.
Actually, you picked neither.
Oh, no, you're right. So, I'm sorry. I'm thinking on a meta level, it will be Udina.
It will be Udina.
But yeah, I picked neither. I said, I don't understand politics. You guys figure it out.
I chose Anderson. Some smaller beats we can discuss. Bring Down the Sky. We both let Balak go.
Yep.
Our service history, I was a Minoir survivor, a colonist who also survived a Thresher Maw attack on Akuz. So I was the sole survivor and a colonist. You were the war hero.
Right.
And a spacer.
Yeah. I've lived on ships my whole life.
So your mother is still alive.
Right. And I could have engaged with her in the first game, and I missed it, as we discussed during our side quest stuff. Yeah.
Ah, well.
I think in the second game, because the second game is when you get messages on your ship through the Cerberus network, that, spoilers, I guess, you get messages from your mom, I think. Because I recall that.
She sends you an email.
Yeah.
She sends you an email, and she's, not happy with you.
No. Definitely not.
But, yeah. Okay, cool. So, now we know what we've done. Are you ready to play Who Said That?
Sure. I'm notoriously at this point not very good at it, but I will.
You're solidly okay.
Fair enough. I'll take it.
All right. Our first quote was submitted by my friend Nick Rosa. I won't have some virtual wench questioning my fitness.
Some virtual wench questioning my fitness.
I know what scene it makes me think of, but I don't think it was whoever that character was. Also,
like my initial thought would be a Joker Edie thing.
Right,
but that's not till 2. Who do I think that was? I won't have some virtual wench talk to me about my fitness.
Yeah, I'm really not sure.
Because like my inclination is a party member, but we have no robot party members. We have them in spades in later games, but we don't have them now.
I feel like this is something a Krogan would say, and I feel like maybe it was Rex.
Okay. Just for the sake of changing things up, I will just... the frustration sounds like something Garrus would say, so I'm going to say Garrus.
I don't think Garrus would use the word wench ever.
I don't know. I think he would.
It is Rex. So the answer is Rex.
All right.
Yeah, it's his reaction to the announcement that a certain revered Asari matriarch passed through. Mira. That's what it was. It was on Noveria. Mira insists that the neutron purge is 100% lethal.
Uh-huh.
And Rex responds saying, I won't have someone judge whether or not I can survive. So fuck you.
You were right. It does sound like something Rex would say. I wanted to try and be...
It definitely made me think Krogan. The first scene that it made me think of was on Pharos, where the Krogan was arguing with the VI.
Oh, yes.
But that wasn't a female presenting VI. So I was like, no, I don't think it's that. Okay. So the next one was submitted by Rex of Millennial Monster Gaming, which you can find on Facebook and soon on Twitch and YouTube. I believe it is a streaming... not streaming. Yeah, streaming.
Yeah, streaming is right.
Yeah, I believe he streams games. But yeah, check that out. We're in space, 1,000,000 miles from where we started, and we still find men in clubs watching girls shake their ass. I don't know if that's funny or sad.
I know exactly who that is. It's Ashley.
Yep.
The minute you walk into Cora's den, that's Ashley.
Yep, that's Ashley. So that was who said that.
All right. I feel like I'm getting better at it.
We did okay.
I think also some people are going easy on me and supplying quotes that are more obvious than others.
All right. So that was who said that. If you would like to submit a quote, please do so. You can send it to us on any of our social media. You can email it to us. If you like hearing the sound of your own voice like we do, you can record yourself saying the quote and email it to us at reignitepod@gmail.com. We'll edit it into the show. For now, we're looking for Mass Effect 1 quotes with no accreditation, so that way we can both play the game.
Yep. And
if you tell me who said it, I cannot play.
Yeah. When we move on to Mass Effect 2, we may still be taking Mass Effect 1 quotes, just because, we don't want to spoil Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, we'll open it up, I think, a little bit.
Okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay, so I have something fun for Fandom Corner. I'm excited.
I know what it is, because it was posted in our Discord.
So, SmashPansy.com makes full body pillow covers, and they have 2 for the Mass Effect world. One is our favorite Turian, Garrus Shakarian.
Of course.
Which is called Momo Garrus-chan. And then there's one for a character we meet in Mass Effect 2 named Thane. That's called Notice Me, Siha. And they're both really cute. They're just very adorable. And I like to remind everyone that Valentine's Day is coming. And I may not be your Valentine, but I would appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't have a place to mail stuff to, so you can email us with details.
I will open up a P.O. box if it means someone will send me one of these pillowcases.
Will you take either?
No, it has to be Garrus.
Obviously.
Do you know me?
I do know you. But you like Thane also.
I do like Thane, but I can't put myself through Thane's romance.
It's rough.
It is.
It is rough.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
I love Thane. I just want that out there. I
Yeah.
do love Thane, but I can't.
easily one of the coolest dudes in the Mass Effect universe.
These full body pillow covers come in like different fandoms too. Like there was I think the character is named Snake. I'm not sure.
Okay.
There was a Snake one. There's anime ones, video game ones. So there's a whole variety. So
the character named Snake, was he wearing like a bandana and
Yes.
all gray? Yes, that's Snake from
Okay.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yay!
Yeah, his name is Snake.
I don't know things. Okay.
Whether you're listening or not, Dan Colonna, I have a present for you.
Yay! I co-sign. But yeah, that's smashpansy.com, and these are called, I'm going to butcher this, Dakimakura, Dakimakura.
Sure. I know them as body pillows.
I tried.
You tried.
So, we have a new review.
Yay.
Do you want to read this review, or do you want me to?
You can read it. People like your voice better.
I don't know if that's true, but
I'm
okay.
pretty sure it is, but...
Okay, this review is from Kalena941. It's titled Interesting and Fun. As someone who loves the idea of playing Mass Effect but has trouble getting past the prologue, it's so fun to hear these two take it too seriously. They have a lot of interesting insights, and it's a fun way to experience a game that I've heard so much about. So thank you so much, Kalena. Thank you for listening, and hopefully one day you will get past that prologue.
As someone who has played the opening to Dragon Age Origins more times than he can count, I relate. Thank you for the kind words. If you would like to have your review read on the show, or just help us out, please write us a review on your podcast platform of choice. We tend to lean towards Apple Podcasts and Facebook because those are the ones that will really get us featured if you write us a review or recommendation. But thank you to all who have and all who will. We really appreciate it.
And if you live in a different region than us, please feel free to send us your review by email so that way we can share it, because we can't see it if you live in a different region.
Yes, we are in the United States. I believe we can see the US and UK stuff, but beyond that, we cannot.
Yeah. I don't think we can see UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think we only see US.
On Facebook, though, that's not a problem. No matter where you live, we will see your review if you write it there. But yeah, thank you for doing that. And also, if you just want to share some kind words about the show but don't have a platform to review it on, don't have Facebook, don't have iTunes, then send us an email. We'll read that on the air, too.
Yeah.
We always love listener mail.
Yeah. Also, tell your friends.
Yeah.
If you have a friend who likes Mass Effect, please share this with them.
Yeah, tell them about it. Tell them to check it out. And then we can hook them as well.
Or you can buy them a sticker and get them hooked that way.
That's true. On our Redbubble store, we have a ton of different things you can put the Reignite logo on. T-shirts, stickers, mugs. Buy them for yourself or your friends.
And we're hopefully going to have a new t-shirt design. The artwork done by Christina Spinks. It is a Caden Alenko cuddly kind of design. It's basically Caden just being cozy and cuddly and drinking a cup of hot cocoa. And it says it's okay to be a marshmallow.
Thanks to a term I coined about him.
Yes.
Although I'm sure other people have done that as well. That should be up hopefully by the summer, the latest, if not sooner.
Hopefully by the time this episode airs, if I get my way.
Right. But definitely go check out our shop for that and more that you want related to your Reignite life.
The Certain Point of View network that we're part of is working on an updated website, so keep an eye out for that, where you can find all sorts of podcasts that cover movies and nerdy things and tabletop gaming. Matt and his other co-host, Rachel Shank, just joined the CPOV network with Screen Snark, so that's exciting.
Yes. So now 3 of the 4 podcasts I do are on the same network. So they're either going to gun for autographs or they're going to leave it be. But yeah, no, it's really cool to have all of the shows that I do with co-hosts under one roof, because Ben and Addie and Case have curated a really great group of humans who are growing, and the perspective's growing with. So we're really excited about that. You can go to certainpov.com to see all those podcasts. You can also go to our Facebook page where you can find the Certain POV Discord server where we chat on... I have to brag, our channel is the most popular channel where we chat with our very active listenership, and we appreciate it. But also there are chats for fun and games and Screen Snark and the Certain POV podcast, and just, engage in nerdery in general. We post tons of stuff there. Case is doing a series based on Superman analogs and prep for a new show that's coming soon. So yeah, you can check out all that stuff. Our Discord server link is on the website as well as on our Facebook page.
We also have a reminder, don't forget to buy your pass for Dark Side of the Con 3 by Vampire Freaks. Join us at the Sheraton Parsippany from March 29th to March 31st. 3-day VIP passes are just $75, and when you get there, there's so many panels on the schedule, you will be overwhelmed by all the gothic nerdery you can stand.
And we will be there as Reignite. We will be taking a deep dive on vampires and video games, culminating with a discussion about the Dawnguard DLC in Skyrim. For those not familiar, it is a DLC where you can choose the path of becoming a vampire hunter or the vampire itself. And we are splitting our duties and discussing those branching paths.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that'll be a good time. We talked about our Discord. Definitely join up and talk to us. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you can. That's a great way for us to be found out by other people.
Yep.
We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr, Reignite Pod across the board. And you can email us at reignitepod@gmail.com.
Any communication across any of those platforms is great. If you want to submit a quote for who said it, if you want to just tell us some kind words about what you feel about the show, turn us on to some fanfic or new Fandom Corner stuff that we've not heard of before, or just say hi. We would love to have more personal stories about people's experience in the Mass Effect universe. Please, if you have stories about a Renegade option you chose in the first game, or a Paragon option that really meant something to you, or characters you got more in depth with, like we were talking about in this episode, please send us those stories. We'd happily read them on the air and would love to hear them, / see them.
I think that's everything.
I think so too.
All right. So I've been MJ.
And I've been Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And this has been our favorite podcast on the Citadel.
We should go. Do you like movies?
Any movies. Old movies, new movies.
Bad movies.
Sad movies.
I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Rachel Corky Shank.
And together we host Screen Snark, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers.
It's a podcast dedicated to the movies that are in our eyes, on our minds, and in our hearts.
Featuring guests of a wide selection of entertainment backgrounds, performers, writers, creatives.
So please join us for the casual cinema conversation every other Monday wherever you get your podcasts.
And follow us on Twitter at @screen_snark. And we'll see you at the movies. All right, we're supposed to do that bit together.
That's cool.